My mom called me this morning and was just like, I watch the YouTube page, and I just love seeing you boys and your banter. It's so fun. Thanks.
Your mom's like, I just am just so happy you guys have this time to talk to each other.
After all these years, you're still talking to each other. And she
All
puts on her
these
fake
years?
New York accent. All these years, you're still talking.
She does do a fake New York accent quite often.
Yeah, she loves it.
It's endearing, though. It's endearing.
Oh, she's the sweetest.
Yeah, I
Listen,
agree with you.
I'm very lucky to have my mother in my life. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, you are. You're a lucky boy. And your mother did your laundry until you were like 36, so that's a great thing to have.
Is 36 an exaggeration, Matt?
Do you
I lived in New York at that point I lived in New York for 6 years. Do you think I was sending my laundry back and forth?
I think you were definitely bringing home large amounts of laundry when you came home for a while.
Well, yeah, in my 20s, sure. Oh yeah.
I've been doing my laundry since I was 13.
Yeah, well, we've had different upbringings, Matt.
That's true. That's true. I come from the streets of North Baltimore. The streets of North Baltimore.
I mean, after college, when I got my own apartment, like I'd stop home, drop off my laundry, pick up some chicken salad and apple juice, and and bring it home, and then have some chicken salad for a day and a half.
I just think you've done less laundry than most people our age.
Oh, I would disagree.
You think you've done more?
I think my laundry experience since moving to New York is exponentially greater than even yours, because I'll tell you why. I have to use shared laundry machines. You've always had to use your own laundry machine and can do laundry whenever you want.
Not always.
I've had to go into laundry
always.
rooms in buildings and pay for it, put in whatever $3 whatever per spin, and then do multiple loads. Have to wait. Oh, dude, listen to this story. At the very beginning of COVID, when no one knew anything, this was probably June or something. I go into the laundry machine. Everyone's still wearing masks indoors. I go into our laundry room in the building, and I was literally 8 minutes late, 8 minutes after my dryer or my laundry. It wasn't even my dryer. It was wet clothes. The laundry was done. It was a 32-minute cycle. So I time it. I put a timer on, and I come back down 8 minutes after it, and I get down there, and someone had removed my laundry from the washing machine. The beginning of COVID. I was just I stormed upstairs to the front desk, and I was like, "Can I have a piece of paper? I'm going to write a really nasty note to someone right now." Because all the front desk people loved me, so they were like, "Yeah, whatever whatever you need." And then I get down there, and the person was down there doing laundry. I'm like, "Excuse me, did you remove my laundry?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, I just needed the machine." Totally not thinking about it at all. I'm like,
what did she do with
touch? I was like, "Why would you touch my laundry?" I was literally less than 10 minutes after it's done. We have no idea what COVID is, and you're touching my laundry? Why would you do anything like that?
Did she put the laundry on the floor or in a basket?
No, in a basket.
Oh, well, that's not too bad.
In hindsight, it's not bad.
It sounds like something that happens quite often.
Something now we know it happens often, but at the time with COVID, we had no idea what COVID was at that point. So that's why it was such a big deal in my head. Welcome back to Monday Night Conversations. I am a very excited host, Scott Macklin, and on the other side of this screen is my other host, Matt Thompson. Hello, Matt.
I'm also super excited, and I'm ready to do some takes.
First, before we get into anything, please go to our YouTube page, go to our podcast page, subscribe, rate us 5 stars, do all of those things. Mostly subscribe. YouTube page. Instagram, we're at Monday Night Conversations, same as Facebook. YouTube, we're at MNC Pod. Haven't been doing a good job of promoting the pod at the top of the show, so I just did it. Now we can move on to our hot takes.
Should we tell the public where to send us money?
We don't have a place to do that yet. Unless
But-
you want to hit me up on the comments, and I'll give you my Venmo. You can send me money.
Yes,
Boom.
anybody that is dying to just give us money, just let us know, and we'll give you somewhere to send it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's a perfect plan.
Matt, I got a text from someone claimed to be the name of your son last night. And I have a sneaking suspicion it was actually you pretending to be him.
It was absolutely not. It was absolutely not him.
He had a couple of one-line. Well, so he asked me. He's like, he said his name and he goes, "Was my dad your cool friend?" And I said to him, I don't ever remember your dad being my cool friend. I'm pretty sure I was always the cool friend in the relationship.
Yeah, I think it all started because he was like talking to me about that he thinks that he's very cool.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you are cool, but when you keep talking about you being cool, it's not that cool. And I was like I was trying to like teach him that lesson. And then he goes, but who was cooler, you or Mensch? And I'm like, well, I mean, I'll let you decide, but it's something you should probably ask him. And he decided to go and text you away.
Also, after I said that back to him, he goes, "Denial is a river in Egypt."
I say that to him all the time.
Well, so I go, having your dad write your text is lame.
I mean, if I don't think I could have he showed me after, and I couldn't have written it any better.
No, he got me pretty good. And then he goes, "Why would you try to make a 9-year-old sad?"
That's his line for a lot of people, though. You're not special in that. Anytime somebody, he knows it's funny, he gets a reaction from it.
Well, I told him because hurt people, and that's a lesson he's got to learn.
And then he called you emo.
Yeah.
He goes, he told me, he's like, "Men sounds emo."
Yeah. I can't believe. I still don't believe that was not you. You had to have some hand in that. How does he know what emo is, Matt? How would he possibly know what emo is?
It's one of his most used phrases in regards to anybody that's emotional.
Oh, so he doesn't use it as like the like music category?
No, he uses it as a slang for emotional.
Got it. Yeah, I mean that's where it comes from, so that makes sense to me. But I only like emo for me is like
he doesn't know what like
music.
he doesn't know what like the Cure is. Like he doesn't
Right.
know that. Like he doesn't know what black painted fingernails and like what your old girlfriends used to dress like
long
and all that
swooping
stuff.
Hair, long swooping hair.
Yeah, all your old girlfriends.
Oh, so many old girlfriends were emo. Not even close. All right. Very, very big show today. We got big show.
We got big news that just broke about 20 minutes ago.
Yeah, literally right before we came on, Devonte Adams was traded to the Jets. They just got defeated, the Jets did, by Buffalo Bills on Monday Night Football. And, you know what they thought they needed? To add another receiver.
Yeah, I'm not really sure what this does for them necessarily because of Devonte Adams' age and his just inexperience with this team as a whole. Does it put Garrett Wilson in a position to be out of position? Does it take Mike Williams off the field? Because it seems to me that Rodgers is done with Mike Williams.
Yeah, after the last play that got intercepted last night, Mike Williams, I guess he attempted to come back and catch a pass, but he slipped and fell, and then looked like he got a concussion of some sort.
But this isn't the first time it's happened.
No.
It's been continuous with Mike Williams. The talent's always been there with that guy, but he just cannot sustain quality football play. But back to Devonte Adams, Jets gave up a third-round pick with the chance to be a second-round pick based on various incentives. I guess that will depend on how Devonte Adams played. He's out of Oakland. Oakland now is done with Devonte Adams for one of the most pointless big free agent signings you'll ever see. He goes back, reunites with Aaron Rodgers, gives them, on paper, arguably the best receiver tandem in the league. It's hard to argue that, but it doesn't matter. Is Rodgers even capable of moving around enough and succeeding enough for this to matter? What are your thoughts?
So there are a couple of things. Number one, it feels like there's a lot of redundancy in Garrett Wilson and Devonte Adams' game. They're both that X receiver, need a possession, need someone to get open, give me like a stop, give me an out, give me some over the middle, something to get open and get the 8 yards needed. They're not huge game breakers, certainly not Devonte Adams anymore in his career.
I call them one-on-one underneath guys. where they're just going to win all the matchups on the sideline, on the comebacks, on the drags. They're always going to win those, but they're just not. They're not breaking the field like Tyreek Hill and those guys.
Right. They're not stretching the field. They're not going to take you one-on-one on a 9 route or a go route or whatever, or a post, something down the field, breaking past their corner and the safety. But I don't. So Rodgers is it seems he's very inconsistent this year in terms of his throws. And I watched last night pretty intently because I had an important fantasy matchup that I ended up winning. Yay me! But every third throw, it'll be incredible. Like he had a throw down the seam to Lazard last night that literally was thrown in the only possible place he could catch it. But then like that throw to Mike Williams, if Rodgers wants to blame Mike Williams for that at the end of the game, that's certainly fine. And he's a Hall of Fame player, but that was a pretty bad throw. Like it was way behind him. It wasn't a back shoulder because he was like 35 yards down the field. It just didn't. The placement of it didn't make sense if it was on purpose. Yes. Listen, the Jets need to go all in. That's the I think the main point here is that they fired Saleh. They have Rodgers for this year. Who knows if he's going to come back next year and degrade in his skills even further,
or even if he's capable of coming back next year.
Right, exactly the point. So they had to in their minds make a move, and that was getting Devonte Adams. So I see their logic in that.
Yeah, well,
I just don't know. Yeah. Well, I will also say one more thing, and then I'll kick it to you, Matt. Their offense did seem a little more modern, a little better play calling last night, but nothing in terms of like what the Shanahan tree is really running on a consistent basis, or even, I know they don't have the weapons certainly that we do. Actually, they do have pretty comparable weapons to the Ravens in terms of offensively now, especially. But I really like what Monken's been doing the last 4 games a lot in his play calling. Yeah. I'll kick it to you in your thoughts.
So I look at it like this: the offensive line for the Jets is the problem. I don't know how you watched that game last night and don't see Tyron Smith looking like a 34-year-old offensive tackle who's getting burned on the outside. He had Rodgers lit up multiple times. So adding a receiver doesn't necessarily matter. The other big factor is Rodgers is so in his head, is so in his head about getting the ball off quickly that he's throwing the ball so fast that guys are just, it's impossible to be prepared. I saw last night Aikman did a couple breakdowns to show his timing, and there was a couple passes where he was at 1.3 seconds from the time that the ball left the center's hand to the time it left his hand. That's insane. And what does that cause? It's whizzing people by him. It's eliminating any sort of late breaking route. It's eliminating crossers, and it just limits what you can do offensively. And if there's not a change to that, I don't care who you have at receiver. If you're throwing the ball after 1 second, no one's going to have separation, and it's going to be a problem.
Well, right, and in practice, you don't really practice 1 second releases that often because most routes don't break in that period of time, right? The only routes that break in 1 second are a slant route, maybe a shallow cross, or just like
a hot route, or just a general hot route. I mean, which is fine, but you have all these dynamic playmakers. I mean, Mike Williams needs to get downfield. Garrett Wilson needs to get separation because of his speed. It's just, the offensive line's a big failure for the Jets. Let's be real. It's a complete failure, and it's the main number one reason that they're 2-4 because the defense is still good enough to win most of these games.
Well, they were the number 2 defense in terms of DVOA. They mentioned it last night on the broadcast. But this is something we talked about before the season, Matt, that everyone was congratulating the Jets on how they rebuilt their offensive line, and taking 2 Ravens outcasts was not necessarily something that we thought would lead to offensive line cohesiveness for this season.
I mean, the reality of their offensive line is this: they have one really good offensive line, which is their right tackle Elijah Vera-Tucker, who's in his 3rd year out of USC. He's a difference maker. But they've got a weak center in Connor McGovern. They've got Simpson, who's a way below average guard. Morgan Moses, and then you have your tackles who are in their closer to their mid-30s than their early 30s. Yeah. And it's just not a recipe for sustained success. The other problem I keep thinking of with this team is, what is this team going to look like in 2 years?
Oh, they mortgage their future for this year. It's literally just it was supposed to be last year and this year, but it's turned out to be only this year.
how that is able to be a plan when you have all these guys on defense that are just going to be wasted now. You've got both Williams brothers, Sauce Gardner. It goes on and on about with the talent on the defense, and if they're not going to have an off, they're going to be back in the Zach Wilson era. I mean, that's where they're going to be back to.
What I don't understand is, a lot of the play calling can alleviate offensive line issues, right? I mean, first of all, we both know offensive linemen like to get downfield. They like to run block much better than pass block. So last night was the first time that we really got their run game and got Breece Hall really any type of momentum this season at all. So calling a lot of runs, calling a lot of I mean, and you have to also account for the type of runner you have. Is it just me, Matt, or did Breece Hall, did he look slow and lumbering last night? He broke a run down the left sideline, and he couldn't beat
better than
he couldn't beat one defender one-on-one. Like, he had one defender coming from the opposite side of the field, one of the safeties, and he just couldn't get to the end zone. It was just him and the end zone. He couldn't juke the one person. It seems like he's out of sync or something.
He's definitely not what I thought he was going to be, and I don't think he's what the Jets were hoping he was going to be. He's supposed to be a game-breaking running back in the mold of LaDainian Tomlinson and those guys. I mean, that's what they were envisioning. Christian McCaffrey type, where he's going to catch 70, 80, 90 balls, get 2,000 total yards, get 15 to 20 touchdowns. He has barely even been functional until last night, and that's against a defense that, I got to be honest, since they've gone 3-0, has looked awful. The Bills' defense is like, you can just walk right through it.
They are pretty depleted. Although their safeties, I thought their safeties played really well last night.
They were around the ball. They were around the ball.
It's the middle of the defense. They have no linebackers, and they're not getting a pass rush.
Their entire interior is a mess. Both linebackers and interior offensive line. They've got some good pass rushers, but what does it matter when you can't stop anything? And the Jets are set up to score 15 points, to score 14 to 17 points a game. Like they take no chances. It's hard to watch.
Rodgers is not the Rodgers of old, his MVP self from 2019. I think that's clear, and that's really what they need in order to elevate this offense to a Super Bowl level. I don't know what adding Devonte Adams is really going to do for them. That all being said, again, I think they need.
You have to add it. You have to add it.
Yeah, when they had the opportunity, they had to because they were all in anyway. So what's the extra $13 million that it's going to cost them?
Exactly, and time will tell. And maybe Rodgers gets back in his comfort zone with Adams, and then having him and Wilson is going to be a magical thing because it can be. Let's talk for 1 second before we change the topic on best case scenario here, because best case scenario is a really, really beautiful thing with hopefully with Breece Hall coming into his own and the two receivers. If that can actually pan out for the rest of the season, they might have a chance, but it also might be too late. So it'll be interesting. It'll be the Jets. It'll be the Jets on the first thing on TV that you see every day, because even if they're losing, it's still interesting.
Listen, the Jets are going to be on national television 3 times in the next month or two. We'll have plenty of time to talk about them. I'm sick of them. They're not that good of a team. Who cares? Congratulations, they got Devonte Adams. They're going to lead the headlines for the next few days anyway. Let's move on for a couple of weekend quick hitters, Matt.
I like quick hitters.
So that's
what the ladies used to call you.
Oh. So moving on. As our loyal audience knows, I am following the Tennessee Volunteers college football team because Matt made me pick one team, and
it's not going great.
They won. They barely beat a pretty crappy Florida team.
Really crappy Florida team.
But I can't say this name. Yamaleva. Yamo be there. Damn. Yamaleva.
Yamo be there.
Did not look very good.
No, and I'm not concerned because I still see it in flashes. I didn't watch the whole game, but I watched enough of it to know that he's just not in sync. But yeah, you picked a very, very it's unfortunate that you're watching these games when they're not even entertaining Whereas, again, another team on your list, the Penn State Nittany Lions last week, had a 33-30 overtime victory in the LA Coliseum against USC in a historical matchup. It had everything that you want from a college football game. But your team, on the other hand, has everything you don't want.
Listen, you sold me on Yamaleva. Yeah. And the 2 games in which I've been watching him closely, he's looked like Yama be horrible. Okay? Last game against Florida, he was 16 for 26 with a pick. And then he had 8 carries for 1 yard. That's not very good.
Well, they take the sack yardage away from your rushing totals in college, so keep that in mind. So it's really hard to judge rushing numbers for quarterbacks.
So what could he have possibly gotten? 20 yards? 8 carries for 20 yards?
I mean, it depends on how many sacks he got. But yeah,
he didn't break a 50-yard touchdown run.
No, he's having a problem. And Josh Heupel, who's the coach, who is supposed to be known for his offensive innovation in college football, who was an Oklahoma quarterback and won the national championship in the early 2000s, needs to develop this guy. If they want Tennessee to be Tennessee and be that team that they were when they had Peyton Manning and T. Martin and Peerless Price and all these stars and Phil Fulmer as the coach, you need to be able to develop Yamaleva into that first pick in the draft that he projected to be.
Don't forget Jamal Lewis. Do not forget him, buddy.
Jamal Lewis that team was so loaded. Jeez.
Yeah, incredible. National championship team with T. Martin.
So many good players.
Wasn't it funny? Isn't it funny how they said Peyton couldn't win the big one because he didn't beat Florida, his 3 years as a starter?
Yeah, I mean, he was basically playing 11 versus 1 against Florida back then because his teams were okay, but Florida was essentially if you combined Georgia and Alabama now, that was what Florida was in the late 90s. They got Spurrier got anyone that he wanted, any player in the country.
Well, he just didn't want to travel, so he just got everybody from South Florida, which is a very fertile recruiting ground. But also, Peyton's success brought all those recruits to Tennessee. So, by the next year when T. Martin started, they were loaded that year. They were loaded.
I mean, that's why T. Martin goes undefeated and wins the national championship because Peyton built the program. When Peyton got there, you know who the starting quarterback was that he took over for?
I don't remember.
Baseball Hall of Famer Todd Helton.
Oh yeah, I did know that.
So he came on the field at the LA Coliseum, if I recall, and literally changed Tennessee football. They were always a good program because they had the stadium, and they're the biggest. And anytime you're the biggest college in a state, you're usually going to be important.
In a southern state, especially
at Southern State, yeah. So I think that there's a chance that this is just some growing pains. I think that but you got to remember they're still 7th in the country.
Oh yeah,
They
won. They won the game they were supposed to win.
Yeah, it doesn't
just barely.
But college especially, way more so than any professional sport, you're really looking for those style points with the wins. You really want to see a team dominate and deserve to go farther. And right now, they're still sitting pretty for a playoff, but they got a lot of tough matchups ahead. And if their offense doesn't improve, you're going to be probably picking a new team for next year.
This has been enough college football talk. I just want to say that ever since I started paying attention to Tennessee, they've sucked, and they looked really good the first couple of weeks. So,
real quick update on quarterbacks for the draft. None of them are separating themselves currently. We are in dangerous position to duplicate the Kenny Pickett, Malik Willis draft, where no quarterbacks are going to go in the top 10. Which is going to be a possible disaster for numerous franchises because the problem is, Scott, and you're going to see this as it comes up. There's going to be about 5, maybe 6 first-round quarterbacks, but none of them are top pick worthy. None of them are top 10 worthy at the moment. So all these teams are probably going to invest in new quarterbacks, and I don't see any of them being anything special.
Well, what happens every year is that teams convince themselves that the quarterbacks are better than they are based on their individual skill sets, and that elevates their draft status from middle of the first round to top 10, and that's just what happens quite often.
Well, that's how you get Bryce Young as the first pick in the draft.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on because I can't. College football talk is giving me a headache. Preseason NBA basketball doesn't normally have a lot of news-worthy events. However, the Timberwolves played the Knicks over the weekend, and the recently traded Donte DiVincenzo got into it with Rick Brunson, who's Jalen's dad, who is also a part of the Knicks coaching staff. And Matt, they had to be separated after the game.
Yeah, so, and I heard the audio, which is hilarious.
Yes.
DiVincenzo's shooting free throws, and he starts yelling at Tibbs, I thought I couldn't finish. He goes, and then he made a comment about how he runs things for the Knicks. And I thought it was awesome. I thought it made me love DiVincenzo more because he's coming back with fire. He's coming back with energy. But for some reason, Rick Brunson, who's Jalen Brunson's dad, and let's preface this with Jalen Brunson and DiVincenzo are literally best friends.
Yeah.
Over the summer, DiVincenzo was a groomsman in his wedding. They are close. They are like brothers. DiVincenzo said after the game they're like brothers. And Rick Brunson decided to get all alpha male on him. I guess that's the only way to describe it. And just talk him down and just say that you can't talk like that, basically. And DiVincenzo didn't want to hear it. And it almost turned into a scuffle. Brunson had to be held back.
Well, the couple of interesting things. Number one, Jalen Brunson had his arm around DiVincenzo when his dad came up to him after the scuffle, which was got to be awkward for Jalen. He's like, "Come on, Dad, stop it, man! I'm just trying to hang with my buddy after the game. You're embarrassing me, Dad." That's probably what he was thinking.
That is how Jalen Brunson sounds.
Number two, I think it's pretty clear DiVincenzo was talking to Tibbs, but Tibbs was like way behind him. DiVincenzo was at the free throw line when he was barking these comments. Tibbs was up near the scorer's table, and he was just sort of looking over at the bench. He wasn't like visually directing it towards Tibbs. So maybe Brunson just thought he was talking to him and took it some kind of way. Which, like, for me,
oh no, he was talking to Brunson. He was looking right at him.
But he said it Tibbs. He literally was like...
Yes, but they were jawing back. But he was saying it... I think he was just making generalizations to the bench about Tibbs and about him not being able to finish. And you guys... Like, he just wanted them to know that he's there and you're going to miss me and I'm too good for you guys sort of thing. But
it makes me think that Rick Brunson feels like it actually was a lot of his doing that pushed DiVincenzo out for this trade. Because why else would he give a shit what DiVincenzo, who, by the way, he's known for like at least 10 years, and again, like you said, good friends with his son. Why would he give a shit if he's barking at the bench? Like, who cares? Like, why take that personally?
Right. But I will say this. I think DiVincenzo is one of the most underrated players in the NBA. If I had to choose any six man that would accept the role and excel in the role, it would be him. He'd be my number one guy that I'd want as my six man, my combo guard off my bench. He's an amazing free throw shooter. He's an amazing athlete. He's an amazing 3-point shooter, and he's an amazing teammate. And he fights every second that he's on the court. He's going to be more important. Mark my words. He's going to be more important to the Timberwolves than Julius Randle this year. There's a really good chance of that happening.
Well, Julius Randle's also a potential trade chip for the Timberwolves. I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but I think
I'm not saying the numbers are good.
No, he's going to be a vital part of their rotation. He's going to be a vital part of their rotation for sure.
Yeah. I mean, of course he is. He's really going to be the secondary ball handler on the entire team.
And you know what? Mike Conley is getting up there, and he's not going to be able to play 82 games, right? And so he's going to take that place and be the point guard at the end of games. I mean, really, it's Ant who's going to handle the ball at the end of games, but DiVincenzo is going to be that secondary playmaker, off-ball guard who's going to be.
But he's also a really, really, really good catch and shoot guy. So having him on the court's always going to be a positive.
Yep,
that's the best part about him. He's always going to space. He's never going to demand the ball. All that stuff. So I mean, to add something like that to a Western Conference Finals team, it's a big deal. It's a bigger when you're adding. My theory with a lot of NBA moves is, when you're adding somebody that can handle the ball and do things that you especially that you need, like the Timberwolves do, it's a bigger deal than any center will have as a subtraction. Because
the Celtics have shown us that the most efficient, fluid way to play basketball right now is having 5 people on the court who can handle the ball and can generally shoot, who you have to guard from the 3-point line. And you added 2 people who can do that in Donte DiVincenzo and in Julius Randle. And, I think unequivocally, Karl Anthony Towns is the best player in the trade, but when you can add two people like that to your like you said, your Western Conference Finals team, I think that's a positive for the Timberwolves.
And I think that their crunch time lineup's not going to have Gobert in it. I think it's going to be Naz Reid and Randall on the floor.
I mean, if they're smart, I think that's what they would do because Naz Reid is awesome.
The problem is Naz Reid might be better than Gobert and Randall.
And Karl Anthony Towns, for that matter.
Right, he might be better. Better than all of them because of how much of his energy and his he's just more of a guy that's going to say fuck you. To be honest with you, he's more of a guy that I wouldn't want to play off. Like if I was 7 feet tall and an awesome center, I'd be like, oh damn, I got to deal with Naz Reid and his shit all night. You know,
and considering his contract, I mean the value is way up there. We broke this trade down a couple of episodes ago, but I thought it was a really interesting scuffle, so to speak, between Rick Brunson and Donte DiVincenzo. But Matt, we have to move on because before the weekend started, we gave our audience 4 games in the NFL that we were interested in watching. 4 games that we said, you know what? Pay attention to these games because, number one, they're going to be better watches, and number two, they have interesting storylines. And you know what, Matt? We gave our takes on what would happen in each of those 4 games, and do you know what we did?
We got it right.
We predicted foe of foe games, and not only did we give you the winner, we told you how it was going to happen as well. Number 1, the Eagles and the Bengals. We told you – oh, I'm sorry. Oh, shit. I was reading the wrong thing. Number 1, we told you that the Bears would not only beat the Jaguars, that they would kill the Jaguars. And you know what? It didn't matter that they were in London, the Jaguars' second home. They were going to kill them, and they did, Matt. They did kill him.
They beat the hell out of him.
And Caleb Williams looks so good.
He made me feel better about my predictions that he's going to be a stud for sure. Yeah. I definitely underestimated Jalen Daniels, but Caleb Williams, without a doubt, is legit.
Number 2, we told you that not only would the Lions beat the Cowboys, that they would, in my notes, kill the Cowboys in all caps. And I don't know if you looked at that score, Matt, but they destroyed the Cowboys, and it makes me almost makes me feel bad for Cowboys fans, even though it's impossible to do that.
I also bet on that game too. I don't bet a lot, but I thought that it was going to be such a beating. I actually did a altered line where I gave where I made it -10, and my odds were like 3-1, and I put like $50 on it because I thought
you.
I know. I just thought the Cowboys are. When you have a team that has that kind of offensive line and you have a Cowboys team that has no defensive line, or Micah Parsons or DeMarcus Lawrence, there just wasn't much of a chance, and it showed. And I did not expect that score,
yeah.
but yeah, was 55-9 was the final?
Yeah, it was something. I don't remember the score off the top of my head, but yeah, it was in the 50s to 9. And it
crazy.
First of all, good for me that the Cowboys kicked a field goal down like 27 points in the beginning of the fourth quarter because I have their field goal kicker Brandon Aubrey, who is so good. Love that. That literally won me my league that they kicked a meaningless field goal in the fourth quarter.
It lost me mine too. That field goal, I lost by I was miserable about it. But anyway, I didn't realize that was the only thing. But looking back, obviously the game wasn't. Yeah, looking back, it was rough. Aubrey's the best kicker ever put on earth, though. So I knew something bad was going to happen.
Third game, we let you know that the Ravens were gonna make Jaden Daniels look human and control the game the entire time. And you know what? He still looked very good.
Yeah, he did.
But the Ravens, there was never in doubt in my mind. There never a doubt that the Ravens were going to win that game. They were in control the entire time. Jaden Daniels still looked good, but he couldn't do everything he wanted to do. And I think largely that was because of the Ravens' run defense. They didn't have one explosive. The Commanders didn't have one explosive run play for the first time all season, and I think that seriously inhibited how we played his defense and his ability, Jaden Daniels' ability to make those explosive plays, down the field.
I think that the Ravens loss to the Ravens has really taken away from what is something special in Baltimore. I think the offense is unlike any offense anybody has seen in the NFL. This is a one of one. You do not see a Hall of Fame quarterback and a Hall of Fame running back at the top of their powers with this kind of weaponry around them. The offensive line is completely coming together. Roger Rosengarten, the second-round pick, more than holding his own now. Looks like a 10-year starter in the NFL. I think if they won that Raiders game, people would be talking, because the numbers are backing it up. The fact that the Ravens have outrushed every opponent this year by 100 yards is insane. They're on the same field. They're playing the same amount of minutes, and they're outrushed. But it's not like Lamar is not doing anything. We're talking 300 yards a week now. He's going to be in the 4,000, 1,000 world.
Which is an incredible, not even close to anyone's ever done that before.
No. I mean, he was actually close.
Him. Yeah.
He was kind of close last year, but he'll probably get there this year just because of the weapons that he has at his disposal. The tight end situation is probably as good of a tight end situation as you could ever hope for, with Likely being so movable and Andrews being so huge and reliable. I will say, though, Jalen Daniels was phenomenal and is phenomenal and made some throws. He made one throw over the middle. He threw the ball when the guy was about 3 strides to the left of 2 defenders, and the guy was running behind him. And he threw it he didn't open up. He wasn't even with them. He threw it when there was no way. I don't think there was another human being on earth that would have seen that. How he led that guy, and he does it all the time. His touch and his accuracy is crazy.
Well, the second Terry McLaurin touchdown in the left side of the end zone was insane. I heard McLaurin break that play down, and he was like, it was an option. Yeah, it was an option route. Either I was going to, depending on the cornerback's leverage, either I was going to go slant or I was going to do a fade, and the corner had his leverage inside, so they did a fade. And it was a back shoulder fade that, like, Brandon Stevens couldn't have guarded it any better. It was just the perfect. It was like he almost came a roundabout way, McLaurin did, to catch that ball, and it was just perfect placement.
Well, it was.
It's a great throw. One of the best throws.
His Stevens' arm was literally in between his arms and the ball, and if it wasn't for where it ended up, I mean, either way, good but really exciting game. 2 really excited teams. And
we're gonna talk a little bit more about that in another segment, but about the win in another segment. But great game to watch, and we told you that the Ravens were gonna win, and finally we told you that the Bills were gonna beat the Jets, and you know what? Ding dong happened. The Bills beat those Jets, and it forced them to trade for Devonte Adams.
That's true. They did not outplay the Jets.
No,
I thought
they didn't kill them. I thought they were going to kill them. They did not destroy them. Although the first half they were on their way to. But yeah, they still ended up winning.
The Bills are going to need to figure out something on offense. There's just not enough around Josh Allen right now. There's just not. He doesn't have it, especially with James Cook out. And Ray Davis did a great job. Don't get me wrong, but the defense just doesn't care about the receivers anymore. Like, all the guys are getting single teamed and shut down by the Jets guys, and it's just a tough look for Josh Allen and the Bills.
Yeah, and Aikman pointed it out last night too. There was a touchdown route. They were in the red zone, and Mac Hollins was running like a skinny post, and he didn't flatten it out to give Allen the angle to get the ball in. He just continued upfield, and if he just flattened it out, he could have boxed out the cornerback and caught an easy touchdown. And because of that lack of, whether it's cohesiveness or timing, or maybe it's just, understanding and talent on Mac Hollins' part, they left 6 points off the board.
I think the problem is that you're talking about Mac Hollins. And,
right. Well, that's, yeah.
I mean, Mac Hollins has been in the league for at least a decade and has been on probably more than 10 teams at this point. Right. He's just a guy, and the fact that he's among your leader in targets and he's getting your red zone touches is got to be worrisome for that team. And Josh Allen, I mean, I understand wanting to get Diggs out, but Coleman's not ready. Shakir's kind of like a B-, and that's all you really got.
Yeah, completely agree. I thought they were going to be in the running for Devonte Adams, but I guess
I'm sure they
were.
You also got to remember, Devonte Adams is only going to go where Devonte Adams wanted to go.
Right.
So, I mean, if they told him he was going to go to Buffalo, he didn't want to go to Buffalo, to say, I'm not going to play. It's that simple. He said he wanted to go to the Jets or the Saints. That's where he wanted. He wanted to be with either Carr or Rodgers, someone he was familiar
Carr
with.
got injured, and that was over. Even though Spencer Rattler looked pretty good.
I don't hate Spencer. I don't hate Spencer Rattler. His arms worries me. He plays hero ball a lot and tries to force balls in and doesn't have the arm to actually do it. And I think that's going to cause him problems unless he can kind of reel it in a little.
Really, really informative NFL weekend. And Matt and I wanted to break down the worst losses of the NFL weekend because it's getting to mid-season where you can really tell what teams are, who they have, who are the good teams, who are the bad teams. The guessing is really starting to remove itself. And let's go through some of the worst losses of the weekend, Matt. There's only one that we should be talking about is the worst loss. The Cowboys had the worst loss maybe in the history of football. I mean, considering a team with expectations, I mean that was humiliating. Yeah, and that's the first one on our list is the Cowboys lost to the Lions. Could they look any worse? I mean, they just can't. They can't. Not even they can't beat a good team. They can't even play with a good team. They came back against the Ravens, right? But for all intents and purposes, the Ravens sort of let their foot off the gas. They got crushed by the Saints, who now that turns out to be fool's gold, given Derek Carr is injured. But Derek Carr is Derek Carr. They got crushed by the Lions. They barely beat the Steelers, who can't score. They just look so like not even mediocre, just like disappointing. It's really bad.
So if you look at their roster, I don't know why you would think that they'd be good. I don't know why anyone thought they would be good. They do not have a running back. They do not have a second receiver. They lose their left tackle, replace him with somebody league average. Their defensive line is not present. Micah Parsons is out, and their secondary was always a little bit questionable, and they were more ball hawks than stoppers. It's a mess, and their books are a mess because of how they've handled this entire Dak Prescott situation. And again, no running backs. I don't know. I mean, I don't think it's a Mike McCarthy thing. I think it's an 82-year-old general manager with a God complex. I think that's a problem.
To top it all off, it was Jerry's birthday, and they just got crushed so bad. It's very, very funny if you're not a Cowboys fan, which we are certainly not. But it was really telling. I mean, I don't know how they come back from it. I don't think they do. I just think that they're going to be a team who play with the back half of the league and will win, a handful of those games or toss up 50-50 of those games with the bad teams and then just get beat pretty badly by the good teams. That's the team they are.
I don't know really. I really don't know where they go from here because cap-wise, you still owe money to Mike. You still got to pay Micah Parsons. You just paid Lamb, second biggest contract in the history of receivers, and your quarterback's got the biggest contract in the history of quarterbacks. I'm not sure how you make a well-rounded roster when you're going in with that.
By the way, I did predict that Mike McCarthy would be on the lose his job watch, and I have heard national content creators talk about it's time for Mike McCarthy to be fired.
McCarthy should never have been hired in the first place.
He admitted he lied about his to get hired about looking at analytics. He literally admitted that he lied just to get the job. Moving on quickly, the second worst loss of the weekend was the Jaguars to the Bears. Now, we talked about it briefly earlier. They were in their second home, and they just couldn't put together a string of drives. Like, they have what I think is one of the best rookie receiving prospects. This is a historic year for rookie receiving prospects, but the third best prospect in my opinion is Brian Thomas. They can't even make him look good because they are dysfunctional offense. They're supposed to have a generational quarterback.
No,
I don't know. I don't know what
he's a bust. He's a bust. He still has all the talent, but it's not in between the ears. He makes horrible decision after horrible decision. He just does not produce numbers. You're not going to sit there and tell me that they don't have talent around him. Christian Kirk's fantastic. Brian Thomas is an elite rookie receiver. Evan Ingram is is a physical freak. Etienne and Tank Bisbee are NFL running backs. What is going on? it all falls on Trevor Lawrence's shoulders, and it falls on Doug Peterson's shoulders. And I think,
did you see what Doug Peterson said after the game? He said in his press conference, he goes, "We really need a culture change." It's like, hello, newsflash, Walter Cronkite.
he is the culture.
You're the coach who sets the culture.
Yeah, it was good that they got rid of I mean, I think Urban Meyer probably screwed Lawrence up for life. I think that's probably if we're going to relive this 10 years from now, when Lawrence is on TV or doing like a Thor commercial or something, he will certainly be remembered for just being a bust.
Okay, so the next worst loss of the season, there are two teams that didn't have losses officially, but it's honorable mention. The Eagles and the Bengals, who both barely won their games against the Browns and the Giants. Two pretty shitty teams. The Eagles, they just look lost. Like, they could not beat a Browns team with a historically bad offense. We're talking about Jamarcus Russell Raiders level bad offense. The Browns are so bad at offense, Matt, that they went 27 third downs between converting one of them. That's an incredible statistic.
What I see is that the Eagles went away from something that they did really well back in the day. Not back in the day, but like when Hurts was at his apex, was they'd have their players a little closer together to kind of negate Hurts' lack of arm strength. Mm-hmm. And it would, and with guys like Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, it worked out. They could flex out. They could run whatever they needed to run. Now everything's really spread out, and Hurts just can't get the ball to people.
He's got a noodle arm. I mean, he really doesn't have that gun.
Yeah, but it's almost worse than it's ever been. So they have to be able to figure out a way to contain this offense in a way where he can be at his best. And his best is not throwing 20-yard outs. It's just not. And it's not running anymore because he's not fast. He looks like a box now. He looks like a juice box. He's a human juice box, Scott.
The Bengals barely beat the Giants, and if not for a late, TD run by Chase Brown, they would have only won by 3 points. And it's just like that. I don't know what's going on with the Bengals. I have no idea. Like, I understand that their defense isn't good, right? But they have, again, we talked about the Jets having arguably the best receiving core. The Bengals do have the best receiving core in the league. The two top, like T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, I think is the top.
I'm not a Higgins guy.
I love Higgins, and Burrow is a top 5 quarterback. It doesn't. I don't understand what's going on there. I really don't.
Well, when you have the same coach for Burrow's entire career, which Zach Taylor has been, and he's never really been known as an elite play caller. He's not he comes from the Shanahan tree, but Zach Taylor was just he was a quarterback at Nebraska in the mid 2000s. He worked his way up and it's great, but at some point your offense gets stagnant, and unless you're going to innovate and move things forward, you're going to struggle, and that's what you're seeing. You're seeing stagnation out of an entire offensive system, and Burrow is they're just running the same plays and the same plays and the same plays, and defenses are too smart these days.
There doesn't seem to be a lot of innovation, as you pointed to. It seems to a lot of like hitches and slants and stops. There's not a lot of like crossing routes and rubs and motion pre-snap.
But there's also not a lot of motion. There's not a lot of boot action. There's not a lot of rollout. There's just not a lot of things where you can utilize the athleticism of everybody a lot.
Play action, not a lot of play action either, which for whatever reason Burrow is against doing. I'm not sure why.
Well, a big problem is they don't have a running back either, though. I mean, they it's a problem.
Moss and Chase Brown are fine. They're not a top half running back room.
They're not going to invite anyone else into the box. Let's be real. Neither one of them are inviting that extra safety up. Whereas
I'm not starting Zach Moss anymore in fantasy. I can't do it. I just can't play him. Let's move forward from the worst losses of the weekend to the best wins of the weekend. I have 3 here, Matt. Number one, first best win of the weekend was 49ers over the Seahawks. They needed to establish themselves as the best team in the NFC West, and they would have been 2-4 with a loss at Seattle. I think they did. I think they bought themselves some breathing room. That division, which we thought was going to be really, really strong, is starting out to be not so strong with the decimated Rams and the Cardinals, who have a good offensive team but just can't stop anybody on defense. I still think the Seahawks might end up a playoff team, but it was a really needed win on the road for the 49ers, and again, one that establishes them as the best in their division.
I don't see Geno Smith really being the quarterback of a team that's going to do anything. Yes, he can have good games, and yes, they can win games, and of course they can make the playoffs. But talk about a team with talent that is kind of like a ship without a rudder. They have an abnormally good receiving core. They might have the best 3-person receiving core in the league with Smith and Jigba, Lockett, and Metcalf. They're all fantastic football players, and Kenneth Walker is just as good as anybody not named Derrick Henry right now.
Yeah, he's a beast.
I mean, that's how good he is. So them being 3-3, I was never worried about the 49ers, to be honest with you. They're going to figure it out. They're going to win enough games to be there.
The next best win of the weekend was the Packers over the Cardinals. Now, I think it's fair to say, even going into the game, that the Packers were a better team than the Cardinals, but it really seemed like Jordan Love got back on track. And also their defense looked really good, because I think that the Cardinals are a really good offensive team, and they held them to, I think, 13 points. So it was a really strong win by the Packers. And the NFC North is like the best division in football right now, which is insane.
It's definitely the most competitive. I don't know if those teams are necessarily the best. I'm having a really hard
record-wise, Matt. Record-wise,
yes.
They clearly are.
I have a real hard time comparing really any top NFC team to any top AFC team right now, considering the talent disparity. I just don't see any of those teams really holding a candle talent-wise to the Ravens or Chiefs, or even the Texans for that matter.
I think the Niners and the Lions will end up there, but the Packers had a really good win. And again, the most important thing for them is that Love looks like he's back to his second half self from last year, which is one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and that's why they gave him all that money in the extension.
Yeah, that's true, and he deserved, and it's deserved, and I think it'll play. I think it'll play out that way long term.
The last best win of the weekend, and I am a homer. So is Matt. Don't think you're not a homer, Matt. The Ravens win over the Commies is another best win of the weekend, and I'll tell you why. The Commies were the hottest offensive team in the league. The Ravens were still questionable after those 2 losses. Second, that's fair to the Ravens. The Ravens were still, people had questions about them after the first opening 2 losses, but really they cemented themselves. Again, I spoke about this earlier. Never had a doubt in terms of controlling the game, in my opinion, as I was watching. And they didn't shut down Jaden Daniels, but they sure as hell limited him for what he'd been comparatively doing in the previous 4 games.
I thought the Ravens played great. I think the defense still has problems. I think that if Brian Robinson was honestly healthy, this would have been a lot closer of a game, and it would have scared me a little bit. The run defense at the end of the day is amazing. You have Arthur Jones, Pierce, and Madubuike being your 3-man front. It's 1,000 pounds of awesomeness and strength, and Jones literally might be the biggest, strongest man in the NFL. I mean, he's unheralded and not talked about, but you cannot run in his direction. He stones everybody. The secondary needs improvement. I don't know where that's going to come from. I don't know how it's going to come, but the offense needs to kind of just stay on this pace, though, because this is exactly what we want to see.
Listen, I do agree that our secondary isn't as good as it should be, but in our defense, the quarterbacks we've played so far are Mahomes, Dak, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, and Jaden Daniels. There's a Gardner Minshew thrown in there as well, but these are
and Minshew's not even starting now, and he tore us apart too, though.
Those are top 10 names at a minimum in the NFL.
Oh, of course.
Of course. So, I think our defense is our secondary is gonna get better upcoming, because we're playing the Bucks and the Browns and then the Broncos and then the Bengals again and then the Steelers and the Chargers and the Eagles. So I think our secondary.
The
our
Bucks
secondary
have
is gonna get better.
The Bucks have Baker Mayfield, who's leading the league in passing yards. So
yeah, I know.
On pace for about 4,545 touchdowns. Not too bad, Baker.
It's going to be a hell of a Monday night game. I can't wait to watch that next week. But I do think the Ravens are the exclamation point on the best wins of the NFL weekend. Now it's time for America's favorite game show, Was the World Wrong? Matt, was the world wrong that Trevor Lawrence was a generational prospect? He's 1-10 in his last 11 games, and at some point you just got to win. Doesn't matter who's around you. Doesn't matter the coach. You just got to win.
You don't have to tell me any stats. The world was really wrong. He's not a generational quarterback. He's nothing. He's nothing. He's just a guy.
I think we all thought he was. I had given up on him.
He's not.
This year.
He's not like the worst. He'll be a starter for a bunch of years, but like to call him a bust is an understatement. He's not a winning player.
We just got a new 5-year contract, so you got to think at least 4 of those years he's going to be at least in the mix as a starter for the Jaguars.
They'll keep trying, and then he'll probably be a journeyman backup after that.
Matt, was the world wrong that Dak Prescott is a top 10 quarterback?
No, the world is not wrong about Dak Prescott being a top 10 quarterback. He is a top 10 quarterback. He just doesn't have any help around him other than CeeDee Lamb. And when you have a one-dimensional offense with a one-dimensional play caller and a one-dimensional owner and a one-dimensional coach, it's stacked up against him.
That is a very fair point. Now, let me just give you the counter. And I don't necessarily disagree with you, but let me give you counter stats. He's only won 2 playoff games in his career. I think he's second in the league in passing yards, but all of it is in garbage time. Against the Ravens, against the Lions, which they eventually pulled him, against the Saints. I mean, this year.
But let's be real. This team has no chance this year.
Yeah, I agree with you.
But they have. I mean, it's just a dead year, and you can mask it. You can try to pull out some games and have a playoff berth and lose in the wild card season. But no, I mean, the Ravens have had these years too, and other good franchises have had these seasons. Not so much the Chiefs since Mahomes, but there's a lot of there's probably 2 Flacco years where the Ravens didn't make the playoffs because there was just too many auxiliary problems. There's just whether it wasn't any receivers, whether it wasn't any run game. You have to have a good team around you, even if you're Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. They both struggled in years where their teams were a mess.
Now, Matt, I'm bringing back a Was the World Wrong from last week, and I ask you again. Was the world wrong that the London games are stupid and boring?
I think that they're not necessarily planning them out wonderfully, but I will never not like waking up on a Sunday morning and having an extra game to watch. That's so fun, and it also, for the league's purposes, completely spreads the game around Europe and London and creates an atmosphere and money and helps everybody really.
But the question is, are they stupid and boring? And 90% of these London games are borderline unwatchable.
I didn't find this one to be boring because I watched Caleb Williams come out of basically his coming out party. He was finally able to throw the ball around the field. DeAndre Swift looked like he was DeAndre Swift from like college. It was interesting.
Yeah, I find most of these London games boring. And like, while I do love being able to wake up and watch football, like we're on the West Coast, these games are just horrible games. They need to schedule it better. It's really frustrating.
So for me, if you're looking at a boring game, it's any game with like the Panthers or the Colts, teams that just don't have exciting teams.
Or the Jaguars?
The Jaguars can the Jaguars can have some fireworks. Don't get it wrong. The Jaguars can have some exciting games, and they've had some this year already. They've lost some close games. It's just a problem for them. And Trevor Lawrence and Doug Peterson, if you look around, who's having the biggest problem recently? The 70-year-old offensive coordinators and play callers. They're having the biggest problems. I think a lot of them are just getting schemed out of the league.
Yeah, I agree. I think once you hit I think 70 is probably the threshold. You might want to just stop calling plays because it's probably passed you by.
Right. There's innovation every day, week, year. When you're 70 years old, you think you want to innovate? You think somebody wants to sit there and try a new form of offense or a new motion scheme? No. They think that they know everything because they've been telling people what to do for 50 years.
Matt, my final Was the World Wrong, and this is a personal one. I went apple picking this weekend with my wife and her family. We love going apple picking, but the apples were all horrible. They were all marked up. They were all bruised.
Why?
They said because of the rain, there was like the excess rain, there was like a fungus that made the apples look like it wasn't hurting humans, but it made them all like have like brown spots all over them. So my was the world wrong was if the apples at the apple picking farm are bad, should you get your money back for going to the apple picking farm?
Do you get your money back?
Yeah.
You have to pay. Don't you just have to pay for the amount of apples that you pick?
Yeah, but like it's an experience, Matt, and they should give me a deep, deep discount on those apples.
I'm not a big fan of people that ask for their money back when they attempt to do something. I think anytime you attempt to do anything, you're taking a risk that it might suck, and you should be responsible for whatever the outcome is.
But why are you allowing people to apple pick if the apples are shite?
That is a good question. Probably because it's their jobs and they have families to feed.
Well, you're taking this question way too seriously for me, Matt, because this was supposed to be lighthearted, and now I feel bad for bitching.
Well, when you start going in on the working man, you woke son of a bitch, you start going in to where it really counts for me. Because I care about the people who take care of their families. Unlike you think they should all take care of you. It's all about you. But no, the apple pickers need you to be there so that you can help them feed their families.
Matt,
and then you want to take money back from them.
I didn't realize you were in the pocket of big apple picking. Now I know. They've been lobbying you for years, and you finally caved. I got son of a biscuit.
I got a few shekels in Big Apple, but that's okay. That's okay. That's not that. There's nothing to do with it. The employees are secondary, but it's behind you besmirching the name of apples in general. Now people are going to be looking for brown spots and questioning their apples.
Which you should be looking for brown spots when you're picking apples.
Were you or were you not told that it was safe?
I was told that it was safe, but I'm not picking.
Then why are you telling?
I'm not picking gross-looking apples. I'm there to pick pristine apples. Pristine apples that I can cut up and give to my daughter, and she not be like, Daddy, why are these apples so gross-looking? That's not something I want to deal with, Matt.
Also, apples are way better for drinking than eating.
No, I disagree with that.
I don't like apples. Horrible mouthfeel.
I mean, you must be eating shitty apples.
I hate biting them. I hate chewing them. I don't like the skin. Just not an apple guy. But I do like I do like Snapple apple though. Top notch apple beverage.
White House is also very good apple juice. Which I haven't had apple juice in 15 years, but I used to love me some apple juice. Musselman's apple juice, delicious.
That's not a real thing.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Matt, for showing up and being here with me on my indulgent apple picking rant. I'm a big fan of you and appreciate your kindness and wisdom as always.
Thank you for appreciating me.
Thank you to the listeners for listening. This has been another exceptional episode. Please go to our Facebook page, our Instagram page, our YouTube page. Like us, follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. We have a LinkedIn page now. You can follow us there. We're doing all the things to reach our audience, and we need you to reach back and touch us where you need to be touched.
And you love to be touched.
Touch is my love language, and that's a fact.
Yes. You like all sorts of touching. Good touches, bad touches, all the touches.
And whatever you do, please take care of yourself and each other.
Bye, everybody.
Oh, hell yeah.